Hi, I'm Natalie Jackson. I have a PhD in political science, and I've been working in research since 2006 with positions in academia, media, and nonprofits. I'm currently the director of research at PRRI, Public Religion Research Institute, a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization dedicated to conducting independent research at the intersection of religion, culture, and public policy. I'll tell you a little about our data processes in just a moment. But first, a word about what we do, since some of you could easily end up in jobs with nonprofit organizations like PRRI. PRRI's research explores and illuminates America's changing cultural, religious, and political landscape. Our mission is to help journalists, scholars, pundits, thought leaders, clergy, and the general public better understand debates on public policy issues, as well as the important cultural and religious dynamics shaping American society and politics. Our four key areas of work are racial justice, religious and political pluralism, immigration, and LGBTQ rights. Although we focus on these areas, as a nonpartisan independent research organization, PRRI does not take positions on, nor do we advocate for particular policies. We adhere to the highest standards of academic rigor, and all of our public opinion research is carefully crafted to ensure it's representative of the American population. We are fundamentally a data collection organization, and so the aspect of that I want to share a bit about with you is an often neglected but absolutely critical part of data science processes: data management and wrangling. Much of the time in classes, you might be asked to work with a data set that is ready to use, meaning you can immediately begin your analysis work. In the real world, sometimes that will be true, but often the data will be dirty or messy. You will need to spend considerable times, sometimes days, cleaning and managing the data before it is in usable form. Survey data is particularly notorious for being messy and requiring lots of wrangling before it's ready to use. Since we collect upwards of a few 100,000 survey responses every year, this wrangling and cleaning is a key part of the research team's process. In fact, we generally do about 2 days worth of preparation work before we get a data set, pre-writing the code we will need to clean the data, and another day or two after receiving the data set. That's about 4 days of work before we're ready to run a single analysis. Let me walk you through why that is and a tiny example of what it looks like. We'll start by importing a recent survey that PRRI conducted into the dataset into RStudio using the Haven package. Just a moment, let me share my RStudio screen. Okay. So I have my script file all set up for this example. As I noted, we spend a couple of days setting up our code files before we even get the data so that we're ready to go. This is particularly helpful if we already know what variable names will be in the data set, and we can set up all the recoding that we need. As you'll see, survey data does not come in ready to analyze format. So first, we're going to install the packages that we need. So I'm going to go through all of these. We're not going to use all of these in this very brief little demo, but those are kind of the standard packages that I include on files like this. I'm going to make sure my working directory is correct so that I get the data in one shot here. So now I'm going to upload the data using the Haven package. The vendor sends this in SPSS format, so we use that. Okay, so it's in. You see R made very quick work of that. It's not a huge data set, so it went very quickly. Now we'll look at it. We'll do a quick view command. We'll see that everything is numeric. All of our questions. You see the survey questions imported. Everything is in numeric form. For most purposes, this is what you want. However, for survey data, we're quite often working with categorical or factor data rather than continuous. So all those ones and twos stand for specific categories and survey responses rather than ones and twos. So we want to read in the factors, speaking our language. So I'll create a new data frame with this next line of code using the as factor function from the Haven package to apply the survey factors. And we view the data again. We will see now that we have survey responses. To see why we have to spend time wrangling the data, we'll look at a summary of all of the variables. You can do that by doing a summary function of your data object. I'm going to resize my windows here to make it a little more viewable and scroll back to the top of my data set. So here we go. The first few variables are information about the survey, case ID, start and end times. Then we get into the survey questions. So we start looking at AHK1, AHK1A, AHK2, and so on. And we see our variable labels, our survey responses. But wait, what is -1? We know from working with this data and the vendor that sent us this data file that -1 means the person did not answer that question. So we have to decide how to deal with -1 responses before we can do any type of analysis. You'll notice that almost every question as we go through has some -1s in it. That means for whatever reason, people did not answer every single question. That's a very common phenomenon in survey data, and it's something that you, of course, have to decide how to deal with. If we want to recode all of the -1 answers in the same way, for example, if we wanted to make them all NAs, we could write a loop. But first, we need to go through each one by one to make sure that is an appropriate thing to do. So this is just one example of the data wrangling that we have to do with survey data. One other note is that the categories we ask people to answer with are designed to be the best categories for their understanding and for them to answer the question, not necessarily for our analysis. Religion is a good example of this. As the name of my organization might imply, we look a lot at how religion impacts people's views, their lives, and society generally. So if we look at our religion variable, we see we have different categories here. We have Catholic, Evangelical or Protestant, Jehovah's Witness, Mormon, Jewish, Greek or Orthodox, and so forth. We ask people their religious affiliation in the language that's most commonly used by religious groups, but our analysis combines both race and religion to reflect the unique experiences of religious groups by race and ethnicity in the United States. For example, white evangelical Protestants are unique in their very conservative views and much different from Black evangelical Protestants. But we would never ask someone, are you a white evangelical Protestant? Because they might not know what that means. Instead, we ask this general religion question. Then we ask if they consider themselves born again or evangelical to get at the evangelical part specifically. Finally, we recode those two questions plus race to get our final categories. For white evangelical Protestants, it looks like this line of code. Here in line 22, we create the new vector, the new variable. Then we define the new variable in terms of Ethnicity, we make it white, non-Hispanic. That's the exact text of the answer label. Then we have our religion response. We want the evangelical or Protestant. And then we have the do you consider yourself born again or evangelical question if they say yes to that. So we have 3 variables that we're working with here, specific categories that we're combining together to make this white evangelical Protestant category. So we run that, and then we can do a quick table to check how many of them we got, and we got 125 white evangelical Protestants in this data set. This is just one category out of about 20 religion categories that we produce. And so you can see how it gets involved just for a single variable. This is a process we repeat over many survey questions in order to translate them from respondent-friendly answers to analysis-friendly codes and categories. You might run into this with survey data or many other types of data. So be sure to check your data carefully when you get it and learn the basics of data cleaning and management along the way. If you're interested in learning more about PRRI or looking at some of our data, we do make it publicly available on our website. Go to prri.org. Thank you.